Recently, in the world of movies, there's been a phenomenon that feels worth talking about. A trend of dishonesty and deception, of treachery and deceit. Is there a difference between deceit and deception? We may never know. But Hollywood is lying to us, tricking people into the cinema under false pretenses, sneaking singing and dancing to the unsuspecting viewing public like some kind of cinematic Trojan horse. Multiple recent and upcoming releases have been full-blown live-action musicals with marketing campaigns that mostly fail to mention that anyone will be bursting into song at any point. You might get a glimpse of one particular musical sequence, but it'll be very easy to miss. Or it'll be something you'll just subconsciously justify, like, oh, it could be part of a dream sequence, or they've just eaten chocolate that makes you dance, or it's just an in-universe performance. But for the most part, they're hiding the fact that these films are musicals. They don't want you to know. I realise this phrasing makes me sound a bit like a conspiracy nut, but I promise this isn't some fake conspiracy invented by people paying too much attention to things that don't matter. It's a real conspiracy discovered by people paying too much attention to things that don't matter. Deadline recently reported on studios choosing not to promote these projects for what they are, noting that they're trying to make them more palatable for a general audience that doesn't care for them. Between the scathing opinions of test audiences and a triple whammy of musical bombs in 2021, they decided that people will not go and see something that they know is going to do songs. So they turn to subterfuge. And this is the result. You have to be at least a little tuned into this stuff to know that these things are going to be musicals. Obviously, nothing gets past me. I have far too much time on my hands, but you can't expect a normal person with a job and responsibilities to stay up to date on which new releases are stage adaptations, which are original musicals, and which are going to be song-free. And that's the idea, that's the goal. The question is whether it works. Does this kind of dishonesty actually save a movie from box office flopdom? Well, it might. The little chocolate boy has actually done quite well for himself. The Wonka trailer was the first time I was aware that it was possible to conceal a movie's musicalness in its marketing. Given the fact that both previous Willy Wonka movies featured original songs, it felt like an especially odd choice to hide these ones. Back when it seemed like an isolated incident, I just deduced that they must have felt that their musical numbers were a bit naff. They must have been ashamed of Timmy singing or dancing or something. Why else would you conceal such a core part of the movie's identity? It just didn't feel like a great sign. But then the movie came out and it was good, and the songs were good, and more importantly, people liked it. Was this in spite of its musicalness or thanks to it? The same question goes for the box office performance. It's done really well, recently passed $500 million on a budget of $125. That's $125 million rather than just... You knew that. No one misunderstood that. How much of this success can you jot down to the misleading promotion? The answer is pretty impossible to know. I'm sure Warner Brothers will take it as proof that the strategy worked. We can always count on them to take exactly the lesson they want to learn from both failure and success. But in the real world, we have no way of telling whether this movie would have done better or worse or exactly the same if its trailers had been a little more transparently tuneful. The best thing we can really do is look at other releases using the same technique to see whether it really is an infallible marketing trick that theatre kids don't want you to know about. When we do that, it's clear that not every example has yielded such unambiguous Wonka-style results. The Colour Purple is another one that hit its musicalness and it's struggling at the box office. Obviously, it's not going for quite so much of a family holiday viewing audience, but it's definitely not sailed to victory quite as clearly as Wonka did. It isn't actually out in this country yet, so I've not heard too much about it one way or the other, but I definitely have heard about Mean Girls. One thing that people on the internet are gonna do is call something a remake when it isn't a remake. A new adaptation of a classic bit of literature? Remake. Brand new origin story of a character depicted in multiple books and films? Remake. TV show about the fictional school they filmed a real movie in, putting on a production of the musical of said film? Remake. Film based on a stage musical based on a film? Remake. Calling the last one a remake is probably the most understandable, but that extra step of separation does justify its existence in my eyes. So it would be a shame if they forgot to mention it in any of the marketing. I saw one trailer ahead of the Taylor Swift Eras Tour movie that had Regina George singing. They clearly decided that Swifties could be trusted with this secret because every other trailer I've seen in the real world is just a baffling display of avoiding the elephant in the room. This isn't your mother's Mean Girls. Okay, why? A new twist by Tina Fey. Oh yeah? What's the twist? Not one worth mentioning? Okay, because this just looks like a remake of a movie that came out in 2004, and that's not a thing that needs to exist or that anyone really wants to see. Every bit of mainstream social media buzz that I saw about this was along the lines of, who asked for this, and why did they remake a movie that's not even 20 years old? You have people deducing that the point of this movie is that it's Mean Girls but modernized for Gen Z, or that it's simply a premature millennial nostalgia cash grab. And while both of these things are probably true, I'd say that they're not really the point. The point is that it's an adaptation adaptation of the Mean Girls Broadway show, but how are you meant to know that when the people marketing it don't want you to? The head of marketing at Paramount said, "We didn't want to run out and say it's a musical because people tend to treat musicals differently. This movie is a broad comedy with music. Yes, it could be considered a musical, but it appeals to a larger audience. To start off saying musical, 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 you have the potential to turn off audiences. I want everyone to be equally excited." What's really funny about this is that he still doesn't want to call it a musical, even when the cat is out of the bag. You could consider it a musical, but me? No, it's a normal movie that happens to have singing and dancing and songs and is a musical. Everyone should be looking forward to this film, the people that are going to like it and the people who you've decided aren't going to give it a chance once they know the truth about it. It's just so funny that they set out to make Mean Girls the musical into Mean Girls the Musical the movie, and somewhere along the lines they decided to keep the musical part to themselves, leaving us with Mean Girls the movie, which is a thing that already exists. So how is that decision panning out for them? Well, box office wise, it's actually not doing too badly. It's maybe a little too early to say how it'll pan out in the long term, but it may be another win for the concept of lying. Unfortunately, the only context I've seen it spoken about online is the "we went to see it and didn't know it was a musical" genre of post, and they often don't paint the movie in a great light. POV, you go to Mean Girls not knowing it was a musical. Biggest jump scare. Top 10 worst movies ever. It was actually so bad. POV, you didn't know Mean Girls 2 was a musical until you sat down and walked out before the movie could even finish. I wish they stopped trying to remake classic movies and turning them into musicals. POV, you go to the new Mean Girls movie not knowing it's a musical. Imagine having the chance to remake Mean Girls and you do this. Or what about this brilliant video where a song starts and the whole audience groans and laughs at it? It seems people may not like musicals, but they certainly love being tricked. These posts collectively have millions of views. If these people were always going to hate your musical, broad comedy with songs, would it maybe have been better to tell the truth to them and keep them at home rather than letting them create such negative buzz for your product? Maybe there's no such thing as bad publicity, and getting people into their seats is the only goal that means anything, but I have to wonder if they're looking at these viral posts and going, did we make the right call on this one? I don't even know if Mean Girls is good. I just think it's very funny to position your movie on such uneven ground right at the very start. Maybe these people are disliking it because it's bad and then attributing that to the fact it's a surprise musical. Maybe the supposed mixed perception of musicals as a whole might just be because some are good and some are bad. If studios are so sure that musicals are a one-way ticket to Flopsville, then why keep making them? This is an incredibly funny middle ground where they're happy to make them and terrified to release them. Okay, maybe it's more that a few years ago they were happy to greenlight them and now it's a scary landscape to put them out into, but I don't know. I think people like musicals. Obviously, the idea that general audiences have a negative perception of them can't have come from nowhere, but I feel like they're very willing to give good ones a chance. When did The Greatest Showman come out? That was like last year, wasn't it? Something like that. That captured the hearts of the world, and it didn't even have to be good to do so. A more recent example is Matilda the Musical, which made no secret of what it was. People liked that too, I think. Internationally, it went to streaming hell, but it was given the real movie treatment over here in the UK, and it did pretty well. Obviously, it would be hard to gauge the global success of something that's dumped on Netflix, but at the very least, I don't think its overt musicalness was what held it back. I'll hold my hands up and admit to being on the theatre kids side of TikTok, but a good few people seem to like the Wonka songs. I'm seeing so many videos of people having a lovely time dancing to Timmy's Little Chocolate songs. Before that, to the catchy Lucy Gray Hunger Games songs, that incidentally were a lot more prominent than the trailers would have you believe. But those songs had thousands of videos, and those videos had millions and millions of views. It seems the people yearn for Rachel Zegler musicals. Okay, maybe not live-action Snow White. I probably will give that one a miss for its crimes against creativity and humanity, and obviously people didn't rush out to see Rachel's other musical a few years ago, but in 2021, was anyone rushing out for anything other than Spider-Man? A lot of those pandemic-era musical bombs might have just been a victim of pandemic-era box office trends, and now it's caused this whole wave of weirdness. Getting people to see Wonka under false pretenses might have worked, but it doesn't feel like a particularly sustainable method. Some people really just don't like musicals. Is it fair to them to trap them in an auditorium and spring a bunch of razzle and or dazzle on them? The thinking is that they might end up having a great time, but can we not trust them to make that leap for themselves? Actually, they don't like musicals. They can't be trusted. They're weird. I love musicals. I think they're great. They take the inherent artifice of the medium and they make use of it in a way that's fantastical and magical. It's such a surefire way of achieving a strength of emotional expression that more naturalistic framing can often only dream of. I'd love to keep seeing them. And I suppose if David Zaslav thinks the only way to justify continuing to make them is if they continue to lie about them, then I guess keep on lying. Genuinely, what do I know about releasing and promoting a movie? Actually, I probably do know more than Zaslav because I'm aware that releasing it is actually a key part of the process. So yeah, I might not know anything, but I do feel like something about this should probably change. But what do you think? Were you duped into seeing any of these new musicals? Were you glad to be tricked, or would you rather Hollywood give honesty a chance? Tell me in the comments, I'd love to know. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. This year I'm hoping to make videos and reviews on all kinds of topics. I'm trying to expand past my very fandom-centric audience. So if you had any fun with this, I'd appreciate you sticking around and sharing the video, telling a friend, purchasing a bunch of bot subscribers for me. That last one was a joke. I don't think I'm actually legally allowed to ask you to do that. I'll see you soon. Love you lots.